it's Rachel from the Photography Chick channel. I'm here today to do a review on some film and some labs. So I'll be shooting Porta 160 today, 120 film on my Pentax 645. I'm going to be reviewing the Fine Lab, Indie Film Lab, and Richard Photo Lab. I have the wonderful Faith here. She's going to be our model. We're not going to do anything too fancy. We're going to do 3 shots in the bright sun, 3 shots backlit, and the rest is going to be in open shade. Each film is going to have exactly the same shots so that we can compare it in the best way. I'm pushing my film 2 stops, but I'm rating my ISO at 160. I'm also going to be metering for the shadows. I'm just going to see what the light looks like here. Wacha-cha. Okay, I'm going to give you a count. And then eyes at me just a little bit. Okay, so when you're posing in bright sun, keep your kind of face up high in that sun so you're kind of getting rid of all those shadows. And I actually like this side of your face because the hair is not creating shadows. Perfection. All right, 1, 2, 3. Good. Now we're gonna go doing backlight, so I'm gonna actually switch her and have her against the sun, and I'm gonna be facing the sun. This is good because it's gonna put even light on her face and it's gonna backlight her hair a little bit so you get a little bit of hair light. Faith, I'm gonna have you step this way a little bit. Yeah, and then come towards me just a teensy bit. I thought you were just wearing socks. I was like, well, okay.
Just socks for me. Very casual.
When you're shooting backlit, you really wanna make sure you're metering in the right, you're metering her, you're not metering for the sun up here. So I'll actually step closer to her and get a good meter with my camera, and then I'll step back. Yep, that looks good. All right.
In this case.
It doesn't matter. Really, it doesn't. 1, 2, there's somebody back. Hold on. Here we go. Ready, 1. Oh. There she was.
Gray hair.
That's cute. Okay, yeah, just kind of stand there. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. Cute. Perfect. Now I'm gonna get closer. Open shade, so we're gonna go back again a little bit. Yeah, that's cool. All right.
And apathetic enough.
Yeah, it's really apathetic. I'm a huge fan. Okay, let me adjust my settings really quick.
Make sure this shoulder isn't football player.
Yep, yep, it looks good. Okay, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I might have even moved there. 1, 2. Good. Okay guys, so that was my process of doing my quick little photo shoot. Sorry about the terrible video quality, and the sound quality's not great, and the location's not great, but this was just for the sake of testing out these labs. So we just did a quick shoot in a friend's yard and had a lot of fun. First of all, I would like to explain to you guys the process that includes ordering with the different labs, how you order with them, and then how you download your images, and then we'll compare the images side by side. One of the major benefits with Richard Photo Lab is that you can order online. This makes the ordering process a lot easier. I personally don't like handwriting out every single order form, which I have to do with Indie Film Lab and the Fine Lab. This is in fact the first time I've ever ordered with Richard Photo Lab. The Fine Lab will send you a link to download. One of the things that you may or may not like about the Fine Lab is they like to give you their opinions and critique on your rolls of film. This was beneficial to me in the beginning, but then later on I found it a little irksome. At one time I got, I think, 3 or 4 paragraphs of just thoughts and comments on my shots, and I wasn't necessarily looking for that. So if that's not something you're looking for, I'm sure you can maybe email them to opt out, but it's not easy. You'd have to call them or email and specifically ask them to take that off your file. I don't even know if you could do that, but personally it's not my favorite thing. Indie Film Lab sends you with what is, I believe, a Pixie set gallery to view and download your images on. This helps me get my fix so I can see my images if I'm on the go, but not necessarily have to download them onto my phone or my iPad or anything. I can wait until I get home to download them. I suppose it's also nice if you don't want to download the whole gallery. I think you can download one by one. I could be wrong about that. The other thing I just want to talk about really quick is the negative film deliveries. Just recently, the Fine Lab started sending your negatives back in sleeves, which I love to death. I noticed that they also put my 35mm in the little pocket sleeves, which I buy anyway, and they're not super cheap, so that saves me money and time. I really hate just cutting negatives and putting them in the sleeves that I buy myself. It might sound kind of minute, but I really hate those round film canisters that they used to send. Maybe they protect your negatives a little bit better, but frankly, it's just a pain in the butt to cut your own negatives and put them in the sleeves. I just end up usually having a bunch of those round canisters laying around because I just don't get around to actually filing them. Indie Film Lab did send me my negatives in one of those canisters, so that's definitely a negative for me. They are a little bit on the cheaper side, so that may not be a big deal for you, but since I'm very limited on time, this is not my favorite film delivery. Richard Photo Lab also sends their negatives in little sleeves, and they were already cut, and they'll be easy to archive for me. So here I am going to compare my favorite shots from each lab. So I'd like to compare the shots as closely as I can, being that we were in kind of a hurry. I didn't make sure they were exactly the same shot. It was more important to me to have the exact same settings and to be shooting in the exact same light. So these were all shot in the same light with the same settings. I really like the sharpness of this one here on the left, which is the Fine Lab. It just looks really, really sharp to me. I just think this scan is really sharp with minimal grain, and it's really quite beautiful. I'm going to do the same comparison here with all three similar shots, same lighting and same settings. Really decide for yourself what you like the most. This is not me telling you which lab is the best. This is me telling you my experience with all three. With Richard Photo Lab, I found that their color grading was probably my favorite. They just chose a little bit warmer tones, a little bit more on the magenta side. I just felt like it really popped really well without clipping blacks and highlights too much. I was a bit surprised to find that the Fine Lab scans were not my very favorite. I found them to be slightly washed out. There's less color and it's a little bit cooler. She looks a little pale here. You can see here in the Richard Photo Lab and the Indie Film Lab, like her lips are as red as they really were in real life, and her shirt is very green instead of what we see over here with Fine. It's just kind of dull. Her lips aren't quite as red. The colors are just a little bit flat. This I felt was an important comparison. I wanted to see how the different labs came up with scans in direct sunlight. Richard Photo Lab, which has been my favorite thus far, really did not pull those highlights down for me, and that makes me a little bit unhappy because I know that, my film can pull those. We can pull those highlights down. I can do that myself. But, if I'm going to have them doing my scans, I'm paying quite a lot. I would like for them to take care of that so I don't have to. The Fine Lab did a decent job. Again, the colors are just not where I need them to be. It's a little bit too green, it's a little bit too cool, and it's a little bit too desaturated for my taste. My favorite scan in this particular set is definitely Indie Film Lab. I think they did great pulling the highlights down. The colors look fantastic, very comparable to Richard Photo Lab, but they were able to kind of bring those highlights down a little bit so you could see her face. These shots were taken in open shade. Sorry, this one's a little bit out of focus, but it's the best equal example I have here. I believe I shot at 1/160th or even 1/30th of a second, something like that. So they were pretty slow shutter speed. It was a little bit dark. Again, the Fine Lab really is so great at creating beautiful, sharp images. I just love how clear this one came through. It's just a really gorgeous shot. Richard Photo Lab here did a pretty great job as well. Again, with the colors, just love it. Really happy with it. I may have wished they brought those highlights down ever so slightly, but I'm pretty happy with this shot. Indy did a pretty good job, especially with my slightly blurry image, but I really do like the colors a lot. I do think perhaps it could be a little bit sharper regardless of the focus, but you know, that's kind of hard to tell because my bad. I really don't want to sit here and tell you which lab to use, which lab is best. That's all up to you. It really depends on price, it depends on time, it depends on your taste. I did not give them any direction as far as what I wanted. I sent, you know, some of them ask if you want neutral or warm or cool, medium contrast, high contrast. With every lab, if they asked me, I said neutral. Everything was neutral, contrast, medium, you know, everything was in the center point. So I don't have a color profile with anybody with Richer Photo Lab. I think Indy also has a personalized profile set up. So with each lab, I'm certain that you can narrow things down to your tastes. You can have your own profile. You can let them know, hey, I like my images warmer. I like them with higher contrast. So it's kind of up to you and your relationship with the lab. The biggest thing I would say is take what you get from the neutrals and go from there. So by doing this is the first time I've worked with Richer Photo Lab, but I've really decided I want to work with them more. I hear that they are really good about personalizing your scans and listening to what it is that you like. Each lab has different techs, and each tech has different ways of scanning and editing their scans. So find the one you like and really explain to them what it is that you're looking for in your scans. I realize that these 3 labs aren't the only labs in the world, nor am I saying that they are the best. They're just the ones I feel like are spoken of most often in the film communities in the US. Here is my brief little pro-con list for each lab. For the Fine lab, I found that the pros were the price was pretty decent, the turnover 11 days. It's usually a little bit shorter than that, so I'm pretty okay with the Fine lab's turnover. This was also their busy season, though it was everybody's busy season. I still think 11 days isn't the worst thing. Their tech input can be definitely a pro for you if you are a beginner and you're really looking for some criticism or critique on how to shoot better and what you can improve on. The cons for me were the scans just weren't where I wanted them to be. All of them probably would have taken me a little bit more time in post-processing. The scans were not in order when I got them back, which I found extremely frustrating. So they were not, the files were not placed in the order that I did the shot. So the first pictures were in the middle and the last pictures were in the first. It just was really jumbled up. So I thought that was kind of strange and not my favorite. Indie Film Lab pros and cons were the pros were the online gallery. I for sure love that. That's one of my favorite things. And their scans were really beautiful. I love the colors. I think they were sharp enough. I was a really big fan. Their huge con was their long turnover. I think that 14 days is just really not okay with me. I would be open to trying them again. I used them in the past a few years ago, but I can't even remember the turnover time. So the slowness was really just a big negative for me. So if you have all the time in the world, hey, go for it. They're very affordable. I would say try it out. The other con I didn't write on the list is just the way that they delivered back their negatives. I do not like the canister method. They may not be doing it for much longer, and I hate to beat on them too much for it, but it's just something that I don't prefer. The Richer Photo Lab pros and cons were their quick turnover. 2 days is just incredible. That is just so great for client work. I can get things to my clients much quicker. Not only that, but their scans were perfect for me. There was almost nothing that I felt the need to do after I got my scans, so I could just take those photos and send them almost directly to my clients. That is a huge plus for me. The cons for Richer Photo Lab was definitely the price. At $31 for one roll of film, that is a high price to pay. I did order the largest possible scans, so that could go down a little bit, but they are in general more expensive because I ordered the largest scans for just about every lab. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already for more videos in the future.